The Galactic Defense Academy sat on the moon of Proxima 7 like a monument to military excellence, or at least that's what the brochures claimed. In reality, it looked more like someone had dropped a bunch of metal cubes from orbit and called it architecture. But hey, when you're training soldiers from 47 different species, aesthetic consistency takes a back seat to not accidentally killing anyone with incompatible atmospheres. Sergeant Krazik stood at the front of Training Bay 7, all 8 feet of scaled, irritated Volnari drill instructor. His species had evolved on a death world where the plants were carnivorous and the herbivores were worse. He had 17 battle commendations, a cybernetic eye that could see through lies, and absolutely zero patience for weakness. Right now, that cybernetic eye was locked on the smallest member of his unit. Cadet Tommy Reeves stood at attention, looking absurdly fragile compared to his alien squad mates. No natural armor, no venom sacs, no extra limbs, not even basic telepathy. Just a regular human in standard-issue combat gear, grinning like he knew something nobody else did. That grin made Krazik's scales itch. "Listen up, cadets." Krazik's voice could strip paint at 20 paces. "In 72 hours, you will face Operation No Mercy. It is the final combat simulation before graduation. 50% of you will fail. The other 50% will wish they had failed." The assembled cadets shifted nervously. Well, most of them shifted nervously. Tommy just kept grinning. "Operation No Mercy has one simple rule," Krazik continued, his tail lashing behind him. "There are no rules. You will face an enemy force twice your size, fortified positions, and a hostage scenario with a 30-minute time limit. You will have no backup, no second chances, and no excuses." He paused for dramatic effect, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned each cadet. "The enemy will show you no mercy. You will show them no mercy. This is not a test of your shooting skills or your tactical knowledge. This is a test of whether you have what it takes to be a soldier when everything goes wrong." The other cadets looked appropriately terrified. Tommy looked like someone had just told him Christmas came early. "Sergeant," Tommy raised his hand. "Just to clarify, when you say no mercy, you mean absolutely no mercy, right? Like, anything goes?" Krazik's scales rippled with what might have been amusement or disgust. "Did I stutter, Cadet Reeves? No. Mercy. Win by any means necessary, or go home and tell your soft little planet that you weren't cut out for the real military." He leaned down until his snout was inches from Tommy's face. "I have seen your species file, human. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no apparent advantages whatsoever. Your people have been part of the galactic community for exactly 12 years. Some of us have been soldiers longer than your species has had faster than light travel." "Yes, Sergeant," Tommy said, still grinning. "Anything goes. Got it? Crystal clear. No mercy whatsoever." Something about the way the human said it made Krazik's tactical instinct ping a warning, but he dismissed it. Humans were soft. Everyone knew it. Their entire species was built for a garden world with barely any predators. They'd probably fold in the first 5 minutes of the simulation. "Dismissed," Krazik barked. "And Reeves, try not to embarrass your entire species. Again." As the cadets filed out, Krazik watched the human go. That grin still hadn't faded. If anything, it had gotten wider. The squad's planning room smelled like a combination of methane, ozone, and anxiety. Cadet Vex dominated the center of the table, all 6 arms gesturing wildly as he outlined his brilliant plan, which mostly involved him charging in first and everyone else looking impressed. "Obviously, I'll take point," Vex announced, his Hexian mandibles clicking with confidence. "My people invented frontal assault tactics. We perfected them during the Crystalline Wars. I'll draw their fire while you all, I don't know, do support stuff." Pilot Officer Glebe, who resembled nothing so much as an anxious purple jellyfish in a flight suit, quivered nervously. A faint smell of lavender and wet dog filled the air, his species' unfortunate tell for stress. "Are we sure a frontal assault is wise? The briefing mentioned fortified positions and superior numbers." "Glebe's right," Tommy interjected from his corner. "Maybe we should consider alternative approaches. Infrastructure targets, supply lines, psychological operations." "Oh, here we go." Vex rolled all 6 of his eyes in a display that would have been impressive if it wasn't so obnoxious. The human wants to talk strategy. Tell me, Reeves, how many wars has your species won against galactic-level opposition? I'll wait. Technically, we've never fought a galactic war, Tommy said mildly. We've been too busy fighting each other. Exactly my point. Stick to what you know, which is apparently nothing. Tactical Officer Rax, a mantis-like insectoid who treated military regulations like scripture, chittered disapprovingly. Regulation 473B states that all tactical input must be considered regardless of species origin. Regulation 926A states that dismissing junior officers' strategic suggestions without review is grounds for demerits. Nobody likes a regulation quota, Rax, Vex muttered. Regulation 15. Enough, Tommy interrupted, holding up his hands. Vex, you want to lead the charge? Fine, I'll run support, but I need to know the exact parameters of the simulation. Vex's mandibles spread in what his species probably thought was a charming smile. Why? Planning to hide in a corner while real soldiers do real work? Just being thorough. The sergeant said, no mercy, anything goes. I want to make sure I understand what that means within the simulation's framework. Glebe emitted a brief scent of confusion like burnt toast mixed with vanilla. What's there to understand? We go in, we fight, we win, or we lose. Sure. Tommy pulled up the mission parameters on his datapad. So the simulation includes full environmental controls, weather, gravity, infrastructure. Standard simulation package, Rax confirmed, his mandibles clicking as he accessed his own pad. Per Regulation 23, and the enemy forces have full logistical simulation, supply lines, command structure, morale modeling. Of course, Vex said impatiently. It's supposed to be realistic. Why are you asking these weird questions? No reason. Just like to know what I'm working with. That grin was back. One more thing. The rules of engagement. We're allowed to engage any valid military target within the simulation zone, correct? Any target that contributes to enemy combat effectiveness may be engaged per Regulation 409, Rax recited. That includes combatants, command posts, supply depots, communications infrastructure, and fortified positions. Excellent. And there's no restriction on methods as long as we free the hostages and complete the mission. The sergeant said no mercy, Glebe pointed out, now smelling faintly of cinnamon and nervousness. I believe he was quite clear about that. Oh, he was very clear, Tommy agreed, making notes on his pad. Crystal clear, no mercy whatsoever. I'm just making absolutely certain I understand the boundaries. Vex slammed 2 of his arms on the table. There are no boundaries, human. That's the whole point. It's a test of combat effectiveness under extreme pressure. We go in hard, we go in fast, and we overwhelm them with superior aggression and tactical brilliance. My tactical brilliance, specifically. Right, superior aggression, got it. Tommy was still making notes, his stylus moving rapidly across the pad. And the simulation tracks non-combat casualties, environmental hazards, resource depletion, that sort of thing? Why would you possibly need to know that? Vex demanded. Professional curiosity. Rax's compound eyes focused on Tommy with sudden interest. You're asking very specific questions about the simulation's parameters, Cadet Reeves. Are you planning something unconventional? Me? No, I'm just a soft human who doesn't know anything about warfare, remember? I'll probably just hide in a corner while real soldiers do real work. Isn't that right, Vex? Vex preened. At least you're finally understanding your place in this unit. Oh, I understand my place perfectly, Tommy said softly. I understand it better than you possibly could. The planning session continued for another hour, with Vex outlining increasingly elaborate variations of his charge first think never strategy. Glebe grew more anxious, his scent cycling through the entire emotional spectrum from fear to resignation. Rax quoted regulations until even his translator gave up and started approximating. And Tommy sat in his corner, grinning and making notes that nobody else bothered to read. If they had read them, they might have noticed that Tommy wasn't taking tactical notes at all. He was making a checklist. And at the top of that checklist, underlined 3 times, were 2 words: no mercy. Deployment happened fast. One moment the squad was in the briefing room, the next they materialized in the simulation environment, a rocky desert canyon with the enemy fortress looming on a cliff 3 kilometers away. The simulation's artificial sun beat down with malicious intensity. "Remember," Vex barked over the comm, "we go in fast. We go in—" He never finished the sentence because he immediately started running toward the fortress at full speed, all 6 arms pumping, mandibles clicking, what was probably a war cry but sounded more like a garbage disposal having an existential crisis. "Wait," Glebe shouted, but Vex was already gone, cresting the first ridge in a cloud of dust and misplaced confidence. The enemy was ready. Of course they were ready. Vex made it exactly 30 meters past the ridge before simulated weapons fire lit him up like a festival display. His armor flashed red, simulation casualty. He went down hard, all 6 arms sprawled dramatically across the rocks. "Vex is down," Rax reported unnecessarily, as they could all see Vex's body glitching slightly with the simulation's casualty marker. "This is not per regulation. We should have performed reconnaissance first. Regulation 663 clearly states—" "Rax, shut up and find cover," Glebe interrupted, which was maybe the first time in recorded history that the nervous Methylan had told anyone to shut up. Fear pheromones were now pouring off him in waves, smelling distinctly like burning rubber and sadness. They scrambled for cover behind a rock formation as enemy fire kicked up dust all around them. Rax tried to organize a tactical response, but the enemy had elevated positions, superior numbers, and apparently no interest in playing fair. Within minutes, their position was being hammered by sustained fire from multiple angles. "Where's Reeves?" Rax chittered over the comm, his mandibles clicking frantically as he tried to return fire. "I don't know," Glebe wailed, the scent of his panic now resembling week-old fish. "He was right behind us and then... he probably ran." Vex's voice crackled over the comm from where he lay paralyzed by the simulation's casualty system. Soft little human couldn't handle real combat. "This is bad," Glebe moaned. "This is very bad. We've lost half our firepower, we're pinned down, and the hostage timer is ticking. We have 26 minutes left." Meanwhile, 3 kilometers away in the enemy fortress command center, Instructor Jal watched the monitors with satisfaction. Jal was a Korthian, built like a bipedal bear wearing tactical armor, and he played the simulation enemy commander with enthusiasm. This was his favorite part of the year, watching overconfident cadets learn what real combat felt like. "The Hexian went down predictably," he rumbled to his assistant. "The others are pinned. Give them another 5 minutes to suffer, then move the reinforcements to surround their position." "Yes, Commander," the assistant replied, then paused. "Sir, I'm getting strange reports from the western perimeter." "Strange how?" "Supply Depot Omega just went offline. Complete power failure." Jal's combat instincts, honed over 30 years of actual warfare, suddenly screamed a warning. "That depot is 10 kilometers from the combat zone. Run diagnostics." "Running them now." "Sir, water treatment facility is also offline. And the communications relay is—" "Sir, someone's jamming our command frequency." "What?" Jal's fur bristled. "That's impossible. The cadets are pinned down. We have eyes on all of them." "All of them except one, sir. The human. He separated from the group during initial deployment. We marked him as a non-threat and focused on the others." A cold feeling settled in Jal's stomach. In 30 years of combat, he had learned to trust that feeling. Find him right now." But Tommy was already gone, and he'd taken no mercy very, very literally. The next 15 minutes were a cascade of disasters for the simulated enemy forces. The food dispensary started producing meals that triggered the simulation's food poisoning protocols. The medical bay went offline completely. Someone had carefully and systematically rerouted the fortress's waste disposal system to flow backwards. The environmental controls began fluctuating wildly, cycling between freezing cold and sweltering heat. Gravity in the barracks kept switching to point sideways. And then the psychological warfare started. Fake orders appeared on enemy terminals, sending units to non-existent emergency situations. The PA system began broadcasting what sounded like command staff arguing about a retreat order that didn't exist. Rumors spread through the enemy ranks like wildfire about containment breaches, traitors, and invisible attackers. Back in the command center, Zal was experiencing what military strategists call a very bad day. "Sir, another supply depot is offline. Eastern checkpoint reports their weapons won't charge. Medical is overwhelmed with sick troops. Half our forces think we're retreating. The other half think we're under chemical attack and nobody knows what's actually happening." Jal pulled up the tactical display and for the first time in his career, had absolutely no idea what he was looking at. The map showed his forces scattered, disorganized, and falling apart despite the fact that the enemy was still pinned down in the canyon. Well, most of the enemy. "The human," Jal growled. "Where is the human?" In the observation room overlooking the simulation, Sergeant Krasik was having similar thoughts. His cybernetic eye cycled through multiple vision modes as he tried to track Tommy's location. Every time he thought he had him, the human was gone, like smoke, leaving only chaos in his wake. "What is he doing?" Krasik muttered to himself. "This isn't combat. I don't even know what this is." One of the other instructors leaned over. "Should we intervene? The simulation parameters are being stressed in ways we never anticipated." "No," Krasik said slowly, watching another enemy checkpoint go dark on the tactical display. "No, I want to see where this goes." The human asked about the rules. I told him there were none. "But this isn't what? Isn't fair? Isn't honorable? Isn't the way we fight?" Krasik's scales rippled. "I said no mercy. I'm starting to think the human, and I had very different definitions of that word." The full scope of Tommy's rampage came into focus when Krasik ordered the simulation AI to compile a complete timeline. What appeared on the screens made every instructor in the observation room fall silent. Guru, deployment. While squad advances, Cadet Reeves moves perpendicular to axis of advance. 004. Reeves accesses enemy water treatment facility through maintenance shaft. Introduces simulation marker for dysentery into water supply. Facility protocols trigger mass casualty event for all personnel who consumed water in last 6 hours. 200 simulated soldiers now incapacitated. 0.12. Reeves compromises enemy communications hub. Installs malicious protocol that randomly inserts fake orders into command network. Chain of command begins degrading. 019. Reeves sabotages primary power generator. Backup systems engaging but at reduced capacity. Medical facilities now operating at 30% efficiency. 023. Reeves accesses enemy quartermaster database. Redirects supply requisitions to non-existent depot. Food, ammunition, and medical supplies now routing to empty desert coordinates. Logistics chains severed. The timeline went on, and on, and on. Tommy had systematically dismantled every system that kept an army functioning. He hadn't fired a single shot. He hadn't engaged a single enemy soldier in direct combat. He'd simply walked through the fortress's infrastructure like a malicious ghost, breaking everything that made organized warfare possible. Krasik watched surveillance footage of Tommy crawling through ventilation shafts, hacking terminals, and sabotaging equipment with the casual efficiency of someone following a particularly boring checklist. The human's face never lost that slight grin. 031. Reeves accesses environmental controls. Begins cycling temperature and gravity settings in barracks areas. Simulated troops experiencing severe nausea, disorientation, and loss of combat effectiveness. 034. Reeves plants false intelligence in enemy command system, suggesting imminent orbital bombardment. Enemy commander diverts forces to hardened shelters, abandoning defensive positions. 038. Reeves compromises enemy medical database. All wounded personnel now flagged as infected with contagious disease. Medical staff redirected to non-existent quarantine procedures. Actual casualties receiving no treatment. "He's not fighting a battle," one instructor whispered. "He's conducting a siege. He's starving them out, demoralizing them, making them sick. This is how humans fight." Krasik interrupted. his voice hollow. Not combat. Warfare. The other instructors looked confused. What's the difference? Combat is honorable. Combat has rules, traditions, warrior codes. Combat is what every species in this room evolved to do. Krazik's cybernetic eye focused on the screen showing Tommy casually disabling another critical system. Warfare is what you do when honor won't save you. When you're willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, break anything to achieve victory. Most species fight to win battles. Humans fight to win wars. On screen, Tommy had reached the hostage-holding area. The guards were already gone, pulled away by fake emergencies and contradictory orders. He disabled the electronic locks, freed the hostages, and led them out through a service corridor that, according to the tactical map, shouldn't have existed until Tommy hacked the fortress schematics to include it. Back in the canyon, Glebe and Rax were still pinned down, though they'd noticed the enemy fire had become sporadic and confused. Something's happening, Rax chittered. The enemy is falling back. This violates their tactical doctrine. Regulation 811 predicts. I don't care what it predicts, Glebe interrupted, his anxiety scent now mixed with confusion, creating an olfactory experience similar to burnt popcorn and hope. I just want to survive the next 5 minutes. That's when Tommy's voice came over their comms, calm and almost cheerful. Hey guys, mission's complete. Hostages are secure. Enemy force is combat ineffective. You can come out now. What? Glebe and Rax responded in unison. Yeah, it's all good. Actually, it's been good for about 15 minutes. I was just finishing up some last-minute details. Also, you might want to avoid the main fortress entrance. I may have accidentally made it structurally unsound while rerouting their sewage system. Whoops. The simulation ended with a cheerful chime that sounded deeply inappropriate, given the absolute carnage on the tactical display. The enemy fortress was a smoking ruin of failed systems and demoralized troops. Not through explosions or combat, but through systematic infrastructure collapse. Final statistics flashed on the screen. Mission time, 43 minutes, 17 seconds. Hostages rescued, 12 to 12. Enemy combatants eliminated through direct combat, 0. Enemy combatants incapacitated through environmental, medical, psychological warfare, 847. Friendly casualties, 1. Vex, through his own stupidity. Geneva Convention violations, if applied, 73. Krazik stared at that last number. Why does the simulation even track that? Human instructors requested it be added to the protocol. Another instructor said quietly. They said it was important to know when humans were, and I quote, going full human on the problem. What does full human mean? Nobody had an answer for that. But watching Tommy guide the hostages through a fortress that had essentially surrendered without knowing it was under attack, they were all starting to understand. In the simulation, Vex's paralyzed form finally released as the scenario ended. He sat up, looked around at the chaos, and his mandibles clicked in confusion. What happened? Did we win? No, Rax said slowly, his compound eyes reflecting the burning fortress in the distance. No, I don't think we won. I think the human won. We were just here. And somewhere in the destroyed fortress, Tommy was whistling a cheerful tune, escorting hostages past rooms full of enemy soldiers too sick, confused, and demoralized to even notice them walking by. No mercy, the sergeant had said. The human had listened. The debriefing room felt smaller than it should have with 15 Academy officials crammed into it. Sergeant Krazik sat at the head of the table, his scales a particularly aggressive shade of crimson. Tommy sat across from him, still in his simulation gear, still grinning. Explain, Krazik said flatly. Explain what, Sergeant? Don't play cute with me, Cadet. You know exactly what. You broke the simulation. Did I? Because according to the final statistics, I completed the mission with 12 of 12 hostages rescued and minimal friendly casualties. The simulation declared it a successful mission completion. Commander Vrel, a distinguished Korthian officer with enough metals to sink a small spacecraft, slammed his massive paw on the table. You poisoned the enemy water supply. You infected them with diseases. You destroyed their medical facilities while they had wounded. This is not warfare. This is terrorism. Tommy's grin finally faded. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried an edge that made several instructors shift uncomfortably. With respect, Commander, everything I did was to valid military targets. I disabled infrastructure that supported enemy combat operations. I neutralized threats without lethal force. I completed the mission parameters exactly as specified. You violated every principle of honorable combat, Vrel growled. The sergeant said there were no rules. He said no mercy. I asked for clarification, multiple times. I wanted to make absolutely certain I understood the parameters. Tommy pulled up his datapad. I have time-stamped recordings of the briefing. Would you like me to play them? Krazik's cybernetic eye whirred. That won't be necessary. You're technically correct. I did say no mercy. Anything goes. Win by any means necessary. Then what exactly is the problem? The problem, Vrel said, leaning forward, is that what you did is unconscionable. We are training soldiers, not war criminals. Tommy's expression went very still. War criminals. Interesting choice of words, Commander. Tell me, have you read the human military history files that are available to Academy instructors? I don't see how that's relevant. It's extremely relevant. Because everything I did today, humans have done before. Not in simulation, in actual wars, against each other. Tommy stood up, and despite being the smallest person in the room, he suddenly seemed to fill it. We poisoned wells. We salted fields. We destroyed infrastructure, spread disease, conducted psychological warfare, and broke our enemies not through honor, but through their complete inability to continue fighting. That's barbaric, someone muttered. That's effective, Tommy corrected. And you know what happened? We got so good at it, so efficient at total warfare that we had to create rules to stop ourselves. The Geneva Conventions, the Hague Conventions, rules of warfare that exist specifically because humanity needed someone to say, stop, you're too good at this, you need to hold back. The room fell silent. Every species in this academy comes from a warrior culture, Tommy continued. You evolved with natural weapons, armor, pack tactics. You fight for honor, for glory, for territorial dominance. It's in your DNA. You're good at combat because that's what you evolved to do. He paused. Humans didn't evolve for combat. We evolved for persistence hunting and problem solving. We're not naturally good at fighting. We're naturally good at winning. There's a difference. Glebe, who'd been called in as a witness, emitted a scent like fresh rain and understanding. You don't fight to fight. You fight to end fights. Exactly. When humans go to war, we don't go to prove we're strong or brave or honorable. We go to win, go home and make sure the problem never happens again. That requires a fundamentally different approach than most species use. Rax's mandibles clicked rapidly. But surely there must be regulations, codes of conduct, rules of engagement that... There are, Tommy interrupted. Lots of them, because humans wrote them. We wrote rules to constrain ourselves because we know exactly what we're capable of when the rules come off. He looked directly at Krazik. The sergeant said no mercy. In human military terminology, that's not an instruction. It's a warning. It means the rules are suspended. It means do whatever you have to do to win. It means the enemy should surrender now, because what comes next won't be pleasant or fair or honorable. Krazik's scales had shifted from crimson to an uncertain purple. When I said no mercy, I meant fight aggressively. Take risks, don't hesitate. I know what you meant, Sergeant, but that's not what you said. You said no mercy to a human, and then you were surprised when I took you literally. Vex, who'd been summoned along with the others, spoke up for the first time since entering the debriefing room. His usual bravado was gone. You never fired a shot. I've been reviewing the footage. You walked through an enemy fortress for 43 minutes and never once drew your weapon. Didn't need to. Shooting people is the least efficient way to win a war. It's loud, it's risky, and enemy soldiers can be replaced. But destroy their logistics, contaminate their supplies, break their morale, turn their own systems against them, that's permanent. That's decisive. That's warfare. Commander Vrel studied Tommy for a long moment. You're telling us that human military doctrine is based on systematic destruction of enemy capability rather than glory in combat? Our military doctrine is based on never having to fight the same war twice. We don't fight battles. We solve problems. Sometimes violently, sometimes creatively, always definitively. The room absorbed this information with varying levels of comfort. Glebe now smelled like cinnamon and respect, which was an improvement over his usual fear. Rax was frantically searching regulations and finding, to his evident distress, that Tommy hadn't actually violated any of them. Vex looked like someone had explained that his entire worldview was based on a misunderstanding. Krasik finally spoke. You passed the simulation, Cadet Reeves. You completed the mission parameters within the allotted time with acceptable casualty rates. You violated no regulations because I specifically stated there were no rules. His cybernetic eye focused on Tommy. But I need to know, if this had been a real combat scenario, would you have actually done those things? The poisoning, the disease, the systematic destruction? Tommy met his gaze steadily. If the rules were off? If it was no mercy, win at any cost, survival of my people at stake? He paused. Sergeant, I'd do things that would make today's simulation look merciful, because that's what no mercy means to a human. It doesn't mean fight harder. It means fight smarter, meaner, and with absolutely no consideration for anything except victory. That's terrifying, Glebe whispered, smelling of smoke and awe. That's humanity, Tommy corrected. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most naturally suited for combat. But we're the species that looked at warfare and said, how can we industrialize this? How can we make it more efficient? How can we win so completely that we never have to fight this fight again? He looked around the room. You asked me to show you no mercy. I did. I'm sorry if you didn't like what that looked like. 3 months later, the Galactic Defense Academy made several significant changes to its curriculum. Operation No Mercy was renamed Operation Tactical Initiative, and the briefing now included a very specific 14-page addendum outlining what No Mercy did not mean. Paragraph 3 specifically mentioned that humans should interpret all instructions in the conventional military sense, not the historical human sense. Tommy graduated with the highest marks in the Academy's 300-year history. He also held the record for most psychological counseling sessions requested by instructors who'd watched his final simulation. The footage was now used in advanced tactical courses, usually preceded by a warning that what they were about to see was technically legal, but morally complicated. Sergeant Krasik's speech to incoming cadets now included a section he called the Reeves Incident, which he delivered with the weary tone of someone who'd learned an important lesson, but wasn't entirely happy about it. When you join this academy, Krasik would say, his scales settling into resigned gray, you will learn that different species bring different strengths. The Hexians bring aggression, the Korthians bring strength, the Methelans bring adaptability, and the humans. He'd pause here for effect. The humans bring an approach to warfare that we didn't know we needed to have rules against. Learn from them. Learn from all your squad mates. And if a human ever asks you to clarify whether something is allowed, really think about why they're asking before you answer. Tommy's new assignment was teaching a course officially titled Asymmetric Warfare and Creative Problem Solving, unofficially known among cadets as How to Fight Dirty and Feel Good About It. His classroom was always full, with a waiting list that stretched to the next semester. Other species wanted to learn this human approach to warfare, this unsettling combination of creativity and ruthlessness. His first lecture of every course was always the same. Rule 1, he'd write on the board. There are no rules until someone makes rules. Rule 2, the enemy probably has rules. Use that. Then he'd grin that unsettling grin and add, Rule 3, if someone tells you no mercy, make absolutely certain they understand what that means. Because in human military history, no mercy doesn't mean fight harder. It means the enemy should have surrendered yesterday. The latest batch of cadets included 5 humans, which was more than any previous class. They sat in the front row of Tommy's classroom, all wearing similar unsettling grins. The other species shifted nervously in their seats, suddenly understanding what Sergeant Krasik meant about humans bringing a different perspective. In the Academy commissary, Krazik sat with his coffee, reviewing the personnel files of the incoming human cadets. Their psychological evaluations all included variations of the same phrase: creative problem solver with unconventional tactical thinking and concerning enthusiasm for asymmetric warfare doctrine. "I think I preferred when we thought they were weak," Krazik muttered to Commander Vrel, who was trying to enjoy his lunch. "They're not weak," Vrel rumbled. "They're just weak differently. They can't punch through armor or breathe fire or regenerate limbs, so they learn to win without those advantages. They learn to be scary in ways we didn't know existed. That's what bothers me. There are more ways to be dangerous than I thought possible. At least they're on our side." Krazik's cybernetic eye whirred as he spotted Tommy walking through the commissary, surrounded by a group of eager cadets asking questions about infrastructure vulnerabilities. The human was in his element, cheerfully explaining the cascading failure points in typical military logistics chains. "Tommy," Krazik called out. "A moment?" Tommy excused himself and walked over, still wearing that grin. "Sergeant, how can I help you?" "I need assistance reviewing the parameters for next semester's combat simulations. We want to make sure they're appropriately challenging but fair." "Fair?" Tommy's grin widened. "Sergeant, didn't you teach me that fair is for sporting events? Warfare isn't supposed to be fair." Krazik's scales rippled with what might have been amusement or horror. "Just help me make sure we don't have another Reeves incident. One was enough." "Of course, Sergeant, I'd be happy to help. I'll bring some suggestions, very reasonable ones. You'll barely notice them." Tommy's expression was the picture of innocence, which somehow made it worse. "Anything at all, Sergeant. Whatever you need." As Tommy walked away, Krazik realized his coffee cup was shaking slightly in his hand. Commander Vrel noticed and made a sound that might have been a laugh. "What?" Krazik demanded. "You're afraid of him. A Volnari warrior, decorated veteran of 17 campaigns, afraid of one unarmed human cadet." "Instructor," Krazik corrected. "He's an instructor now. And yes, I'm afraid of him. You should be too." "Why? He's never shown any aggression toward Academy staff." "That's exactly why," Krazik said quietly, his cybernetic eye tracking Tommy as he rejoined his group of students. "He's never aggressive. He's never angry. He's always polite, always helpful, always grinning. Because humans don't need aggression to be dangerous. They just need a problem to solve and permission to get creative." Vrel considered this, watching as Tommy enthusiastically explained something that made all his students look simultaneously fascinated and disturbed. "You really did say no mercy, didn't you?" "I did. And I learned an important lesson that day." Krazik took a long drink of his coffee. "Never give a human an open-ended instruction and expect them to interpret it the way you would. They think different. They fight different. They win different. At least they're good at teaching others." "That's what worries me most," Krazik admitted. "He's teaching them, all of them. Every species in the Academy is now learning human warfare doctrine. In 10 years, the entire Galactic Defense Force will fight like humans. Is that a bad thing?" Krazik watched Tommy demonstrate something on a datapad while his students leaned in, absorbed. "Ask me in 10 years. Right now, I'm just glad humanity joined the galactic community as friends. Because if they'd shown up as enemies..." He trailed off, scales shifting to an uncomfortable shade of gray. "They would have won," Vrel finished quietly. "They would have won," Krazik agreed. "Not quickly, not gloriously, not honorably. But they would have won, absolutely, completely, permanently, and we'd probably never have seen them coming." Across the commissary, Tommy glanced up and caught Krazik's eye. He raised his coffee cup in a cheerful salute, that grin never wavering. Krazik raised his own cup in return, acknowledging the gesture. When Tommy looked away, Krazik set down his coffee with a sigh. "No mercy," he muttered to himself. "What was I thinking?" As if summoned by the words, Tommy appeared at his table again, datapad in hand. "Sorry to interrupt again, Sergeant, but I had some thoughts about those simulation parameters. Nothing major. Just some minor adjustments to make them more realistic. Little things, really. Krazik's cybernetic eye focused on the datapad, scanning the proposed changes. His scales went through several colors in rapid succession, finally settling on horrified purple. These are minor adjustments? Very minor, Tommy assured him, grinning wider. Just adding some realistic supply chain vulnerabilities, infrastructure interdependencies, morale tracking systems, and environmental exploitation possibilities. You know, to give the cadets a more complete tactical picture. You want to teach them everything you did in Operation No Mercy. Well, not everything, that would take years. This is just the basics. Introduction to Human-Style Warfare 101. The fun stuff comes in the advanced courses. There's more? Sergeant, what I did in that simulation was improvised field tactics. Human military doctrine has been refined over thousands of years of continuous warfare. We have entire academic fields dedicated to studying how to fight efficiently. What I showed you was Tuesday for us. Krazik stared at the human for a long moment. You terrify me, Cadet Reeves. Instructor Reeves, Tommy corrected with a grin. And thank you, Sergeant. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. As Tommy walked away again, whistling that same cheerful tune from the simulation, Krazik turned to Vrel with the expression of someone who'd just realized they'd made a terrible mistake. We invited them in, Krazik said. We welcomed humanity to the galactic community, gave them access to our military academy, asked them to share their knowledge. We did this to ourselves. They're allies, Vrel pointed out. They're humans, Krazik corrected, which means they're allies right up until the moment it's more beneficial to be something else. And if that day ever comes, we're all going to learn what no mercy really means. Surely you're being paranoid. Krazik pulled up the simulation footage on his datapad, the images of systematic infrastructure collapse and psychological warfare flickering across the screen. Am I? Because I gave that human a simple combat simulation, and he treated it like an existential war. He didn't fight an enemy, he dismantled them. He didn't win a battle, he eliminated a threat. That's not paranoia, Vrel. That's pattern recognition. The two officers sat in silence watching Tommy across the commissary, laughing with his students, looking absolutely harmless and completely terrifying at the same time. Finally, Vrel spoke. You know what the worst part is? What? He's right. Everything he did was more effective than conventional tactics. We're going to adopt his methods because they work better than ours. In a generation, the entire Galactic Defense Force will think like humans, fight like humans, win like humans. I know, Krazik said softly. That's what scares me most. Not that humans are dangerous, but that they're contagiously dangerous. They don't just win, they teach everyone else how to win their way. And once you learn to think like a human, he gestured at the datapad with Tommy's proposed simulation changes. You can't unlearn it. You can't go back to honorable combat once you understand how much more effective ruthless efficiency is. Then we'd better make absolutely certain they stay on our side. Agreed. Which means no more telling humans no mercy unless we literally mean it. Krazik finished his coffee and stood. I'm going to approve his simulation changes. All of them. Why? Because if we don't learn this from them, we'll eventually learn it from someone else. Someone who learned it from fighting humans. And I'd rather learn warfare from allies than from enemies. He paused at the door. Even if those allies are absolutely terrifying when you really think about what they're capable of. As Krazik left the commissary, he passed Tommy one more time. The human was demonstrating something on his datapad to a group of fascinated Hexian cadets. Whatever it was made them all suddenly look very thoughtful and slightly queasy. Instructor Reeves, Krazik called out, your simulation changes are approved. Tommy's face lit up. Excellent. The cadets are going to learn so much. Oh, and Sergeant, I've been working on a new course proposal, Advanced Infrastructure Warfare and Systemic Exploitation Techniques. I think it could really benefit the upper-level students. Krazik's scale cycled through 3 colors before settling on resigned gray. Submit it to my office. I'll review it. You're the best, Sergeant. Anything at all, just let me know how I can help. As Krasik walked away, he heard one of the Hexian cadets ask Tommy, "Instructor, what's the human word for defeating an enemy so completely they never recover?" Tommy's response drifted down the corridor. "We have lots of words for it. Annihilation, decimation, total war, Sherman's march. But my personal favorite is just winning, because from a human perspective, anything less than complete victory is just a postponed rematch." Krasik picked up his pace, suddenly very interested in being somewhere else. Back in the commissary, Tommy continued his lesson, surrounded by eager students from a dozen different species, all learning that humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of winning wars before they'd even reached the stars. And now, with access to galactic technology and unlimited space to think big, humanity was just getting started. The galaxy had welcomed humanity with open arms, never realizing that humans didn't just join organizations. They optimized them. They didn't just learn doctrine. They improved it. They didn't just fight wars. They redefined what warfare meant. Sergeant Krasik's warning about the Reeves incident would echo through the academy for generations. And every time a new instructor tried to teach cadets about no mercy, they'd remember the day a human took them literally and showed the entire galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or speed or natural armor. It was creativity, applied with absolute ruthlessness toward a single-minded goal: winning. Not participating, not fighting valiantly, not dying with honor, just winning. Because humans had learned long ago that history was written by victors, and they'd decided they rather liked writing history. And somewhere in the Academy archives, the footage of Tommy's 43-minute systematic dismantling of a fortress would play on repeat in tactical courses, always with the same introduction from instructors who'd learned their lesson. This is what happens when you tell a human no mercy. Watch carefully. Learn. And never, ever forget that humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other before they met us. This is what they learned.